We're getting good at that.
Okay.
So we had this idea. Denton's birthday's coming up. We're just getting into this recording stuff, but we had the idea of possibly sharing some memories we have of Denton, and we'll see how many we get through. But we'll spend a second on this. So Trevor, when you think of memories with Denton, what do you think of?
I think one of the fond memories that I had, so I guess I go chronological, but I remember, I think it's first important to know that from my perspective, growing up, I'm 6 years younger than Dad, which is a considerable amount of time. And like I'm barely entering middle school when he's graduating. Yeah, so there's this considerable amount of time, and there's not a whole lot of connection. And so most of the memories I would with Denton, even when he's in high school, is I'm going to his events. I know what's going on in his life, and I don't really have anything. As a middle schooler, you don't really have a lot going on. So I never felt like Denton was in tune with my life, nor did he need to be. There wasn't anything. I wasn't
6 years.
I didn't even know who I was, right? But I do remember. I think it would have been my junior year, so 2000. Would have been 2009, and it was a basketball game. Yeah, I was a junior because I remember the guy I was guarding, and
you remember the guy you were guarding?
Well, I was assigned to guard their best player, and he was a senior. I remember because I had to learn who he was because I hadn't played against him a bunch. He was great ahead of me, and. I remember Den coming to the game, but Mom and Dad had come to a bunch of games, and you had been to a couple games, and obviously Matt had been to a bunch of games. But I remember Den had brought his camera that he was really excited about, and I could tell that. It was just really cool because I had seen family watch me a bunch of times, but it felt like he was really invested in me. In wanting me to do well. And I remember there was just a couple of moments where he's taking pictures, where he's up in the stands, or even a couple times that he came down and took pictures. But that he was really trying to capture me. He was really trying to capture the game. And then I remember there were a couple of times where I could hear him yelling at the ref, or about a call or whatever. And that was just so uncharacteristic. Usually Mom and Dad are in the stands, and it's taking care of Dave, and he's just kind of enjoying some entertainment. But Denton was very invested in my game. He knew that I was guarding the best player. And to me, it just meant a lot to see that level of investment in me. Growing up, me and Matt and Mom and Dad, our investment was in Dave. It was very low investment in me and Matt, I felt like.
Yeah.
And so that was
just each other in general.
Yeah, and just
Besides Dave.
And it was kind of the first time that I felt like someone was taking a true investment in me and really cared about me. And your best friends where they don't even know what's going on. Like if you're mad at someone, they're like, "Hey, I'm mad at them too." Because I don't really know what happened, but I'm your best friend. And if you're mad at them, then I'm mad at them too. It's like that's what it felt like. I was like, man, there's somebody on my team. And when the game ended, we went back to the locker room and came out. I remember Denton was venting to me about some bullcrap call, and he wasn't like, oh, the refs were rough tonight. It wasn't a general statement. It was, man. When you were guarding that guy and they called that foul on you, or when you went to the hoop and that guy got you right on the elbow, dude, I saw it. I almost got a picture of it, And so he was right there with me. And that was the first time in any sports, or kind of felt like with anything, that I felt like someone was right there with me. And I was like, man, this is so cool to just be connected to somebody. And it was so cool that I felt like, Denton's at the time, recently married, he's going to college, he's trying to figure things out. And he still has the emotional capacity and wherewithal to say, hey, to Trevor, who's 16, 17 years old right now, this is the most important thing that's going on. And I'm going to invest in this with him. And it was a really just cool, deep connection. And he was going to go back to school. He was probably around for the holidays or something. But, so it wasn't, there wasn't this expectation that he was going to call me every week. But it was him letting me know, like, hey, while I can, if I have the time, I'm going to invest in you because you're my brother and I love you. And so it was just it was a really cool moment. And then the other one was once I got to BYU, they drove me out there. I really only had like a tub or two of stuff. But I think I had to stay with them for a couple of days before I moved into my apartment.
Them, like Denton's married.
Yeah, Denton and Courtney. So this is 2010. Sort of in June 2010. And I'm coming off right off a baseball season and like working out all the time. So my appetite's through the roof. And him and Courtney they were really good about, saving money and being budget friendly. And, they've got the baby. I think she was pregnant at the time. She was pregnant at the time. And in the moment, it was one of those things where like I didn't appreciate this until a couple months later. But in the moment, I show up and I'm like, well, I got a couple days to stay here, and there was just no food. Like in my mind, there was just no food in the house. And to Courtney and Dan, they had exactly the right amount of food for them.
Right. But you're blowing through calories.
And I'm blowing through calories. Well, and it was one of those things where because Courtney was home most of the day and it was probably very anxious for her, where she is a really good hostess and she does want to be nice and all this stuff, but there's no way that she could have kept up with me as far as she's pregnant, she's home all day, I'm starving all the time, like I just want to eat the cupboards right off the walls, like I was kind of vocal about it. I was like, man, do you guys have any food or anything I can snack on? Like, I'm sorry, but and I know it was really hard for her. And Denton is, he'd just come home after work late afternoon and just want to hang out, so he had no idea that I was providing this anxious experience for his wife. And of course, they don't really even have a space to vent about me because I'm there, And so I was there for, 3 or 4 days. And then even when I left to go to my apartment, they helped me take my stuff over there. Denton helped me load up. And Denton was, he gave me his number. And anything you want to know about campus, just let me know. And he was just I think what I appreciate, and the reason it took me a while to appreciate this is because I think he saw 2 things. He saw me going through something that he knew I didn't understand. So he was like, man, Trevor's about to go to this university where he doesn't know where the buildings are at. He doesn't know anything about his roommates. He doesn't have any, friends that he didn't drive out here with a high school buddy and they're going to be roommates. I know what this guy's going through. And so I think he was really good about laying this foundation. And to me, in the moment, it's kind of like, I'm good, man. Like, I'm confident. Like, well, take care of myself. And he was like, well, here's my number, and let me know if you need anything. Let's meet up for lunch. And we did. Like, the first week, he made sure that we met up for lunch. And it was him just kind of taking care of me and protecting me. And while in the moment, maybe that first time they left me at the apartment, it was kind of like, I'm good, man. Like, frick. Like, by the next day when I'm walking around classes, I had a paper map, and I was just like, I had no idea where I was going. And all of a sudden there's thousands of students, and it was pretty overwhelming. But he knew that I would be a lot more confident if he at least made himself appear like always disposable. Like, you can always call me, you can always let me know. And even just, I think he understands too the confidence of having like, oh, my brother goes here. Like, I've got an in. And he made sure that I felt like I had an in, and just little things like that. Just that later on it's like, man, that's really, really appreciative. And the reason I appreciate it too is because he, it's like he opened up that social aspect to me, and I've been able to do that to other people and really develop friendships. And every time that it does happen, I think back to Denton giving me this, and the other thing that Denton did. Well, so I there was two things, but so one, he understood that, but two, I think he was just genuinely excited that another sibling was going to enter the same sphere and kind of experience the same world that he was experiencing. The other cool memory at BYU was he had texted me what I was doing for, or he wanted to hang out or something. I can't remember how it got started, but I basically let him know, like, me and my buddies go to the Richards building, which has got the swimming pool and the sauna and all this stuff. I was like, we go there every night. Like, we shoot around at the pool hoops, we go off the high dives, do some tricks, go hit the sauna for 20 minutes. It's like a really good time. He's like, oh, he goes, hey, that sounds like a blast. Like, let's do it one night. And it was, I don't know why, but it just like, I think it meant so much to me, not because he was older or more experienced, but there was no real, like, I knew he had mission friends, and I knew they had couple friends. And I was a freshman. I was 6 years younger than him. And when you think of Denton, you don't think of pool basketball or sitting in a sauna. And so for me, it very much came across as it just sent a different message. That I just knew there was no way he could have been there for the pool basketball. And I think he took a high dive class, So
yeah, I remember that.
There's that aspect that he's interested in. But it felt like, man, there's no way he could be this interested to, leave his wife and to get out and hang out with me. The interest is me. He must like actually genuinely care about me, and like is interested in what I'm interested in, and wants to invest in me, and I just always appreciated that when the time comes, he knows that we're all mature enough to understand he can't do it all the time. Like, his wife and kids are number one priority. But I do appreciate that he loves us enough to know that when the time comes, he needs to, and he knows he's going to let us know that he loves us and he cares about us. And the last one, actually, there was a while. I mean, I think that I've always, in order to avoid debt, I've always rode a really tight financial line. And I've always lived more frugally. There were times when I literally bought like an 80 count corn dog box, and I was like, "This is all I got this month," and a box of ramen. And that's not good, by the way, for anyone watching this. Like, you sweat different. It's weird. But the thing is, I've always been really vocal about it to everyone in the family. I've been vocal about it to everybody. When I was like, I'm sorry guys, but times are tough, And I think Denton has always been really good about understanding and appreciating productive struggle. And I didn't expect or want anybody to ever come to me and say, hey, if you ever need financial help, call. But I think deep down in my heart, I always wanted somebody to at least let me know that, like, somebody was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, in my heart, I could logically tell myself that someone was going to be there. I could logically be like, Denton's got this job, Jeff's got this job, mom and dad have this job. Like, at the end of the day,
somebody's going to come, right?
At the end of the day, if I called, like, and just needed like $100, I'd get $100, you know? And it was around the time that it was around Christmas time. I want to say it was probably during my student teaching. And so that would have been like this, like December 2018. November, December, January 2018. And they told me when I did my student teaching that I shouldn't have a job. So intense, you can't have a job. Like, it's just going to consume your life, student teaching. Turns out that was a lie, right? Turns out I had an incredible amount of free time where I totally could have a job, but I had already quit my job. And so we had saved up enough money that basically we were going to run out of money by the end of January. So I finished my student teaching in December. End of January, we don't have anything. So Jordy's working, but she's stopping the bleeding, or slowing the bleeding. We're still bleeding though. and I got a text, I think from Denton to everybody that was like, hey, let's pull our money together and get Mom a recliner or something like that. Get a new recliner. And Denton had already calculated it's going to come out to X amount of dollars each. I can't remember what it was, $75 each or $100 each or something like that. I can't remember. Which is not an absurd amount. And Denton gave us a couple of months warning. Like, just budget and find $70 or whatever. And I responded to the text and said, hey, I got to be really honest with everybody. It's like, it's not in the plans. And I can't remember when what month or whenever he called, but he didn't call immediately. So it wasn't like this reactionary, like, oh my gosh, But I remember a week later, he just called and was just checking in, and I didn't say anything about finances. And, but at the time, and anyways, he just, I didn't say anything. I didn't bring it up. I didn't say anything by the end. He goes, hey, just so you know, like, I know sometimes times can be tough, but, always know, like, if you ever need financial help, like, always be there. I always got your back. And I I'm playing it cool, and I'm like, of course, I'm just like, it's like, oh, dude, we're
sure.
Good. We budgeted out, dude. Like,
we'll be fine. I've got a plan. I'm independent.
Think I'm an idiot. But in the moment, I was like, man, wow, that meant a lot. When he hung up the phone call, and I told Jordy that, Dan just offered help. We'll be fine, but he offered help, and I was like, I've been complaining about finances for several years, and I was like, it's so cool that somebody made the phone call, and I didn't bring it up, like, I didn't bring it up in the phone call, it's just, I think it meant a lot in the moment. It meant a lot more in January when by January like 11th or 12th, it was not looking good. Like January 11th and 12th, 2019, I had done a couple substituting jobs and hated it. I mean, substituting is tough when you're going to do it every day.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the plan. I was like, I'll substitute and apply. And BYU told me that, there'll be tons of jobs available in January. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. I graduated with 5 other people, and there was one teaching job available. And when I interviewed for the job, we had around $160 to our name. And that was it. Savings, checking, total was $160. We just blew through everything. And we didn't have a Christmas that year. We told people, I think that, it's like, if we were with her family, we're like, oh, we opened up gifts early. Like, we just, we're just... But we bought gifts for, like, the siblings we were supposed to buy gifts for.
Yeah.
And that was it. But yeah. And Jordy might dispute that financial number. But I remember looking at my phone and looking at that number, it was like $162. And just, like, staring off into oblivion of just, like, this is it.
This
you know,
is the end.
this is how we all die. But I just couldn't believe, like, you know, it had been so many years of frugal living, and so I would never be in that position. And I was all of a sudden in that position where it was like BYU led me on. And I quit my job, which I shouldn't have done. And they led me on about jobs that would be available. And me and all my other, you know, people who just became eligible to teach applied for that job. And luckily, I was the one who got it. But even though I was the one who got it, they told me, they're like, yeah, you get paid monthly as a teacher. Oh, sweet. So we just have to make this $160 last until January 31st. Well, the payment didn't come, and then I called Alpine School District, and they're like, oh, you get paid. Everything's like a month behind, so you're not going to get paid until the end of February.
End of February.
So, like, when you get paid for February, end of February, it'll be for January's work, and then end of March will be for February's work. So I'm sitting there going, oh, I got to make a phone call. And it was so nice because I was actually, you know, you shouldn't be on the phone when you drive. But I was actually I was on I-15 when I got off the phone with the district and hung up, and I was like, how nice it is that I don't have to cold call Denton and be like, I can't make rent.
Mm-hmm.
I have a job lined up. I'll get you the money, but I can't pay rent. It's due tomorrow. Or not due tomorrow, but it's, you know, I have like 4 days to turn it in.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap. Like, it would have been so nice that I don't have to cold call them. That I can say, hey, remember how you mentioned that you'd be willing to help? We've done everything that we can. I do have a job lined up. The payments are a month behind. Okay, so for anyone wondering why there's a cut in the video,
Jeff
had to answer.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah,
it was a work call. It was a work call.
So I got a work call, made some noise.
We're back though.
So we're gonna edit that out. Now we're back.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm 10 seconds away from wrapping it up. on I-15 going home, that's all I could think about was how appreciative I was of Denton, and that he gave me an opportunity, and not only that, but I think you can just there's such a bigger love and appreciation for anyone who can read between the lines, and anyone that's able to kind of see you for who you really are, or you know, if in Denton's case, I really felt like he must have really thought about what I was going through to know that someone needed to reach out and at least just say, hey, if it ever does get that bad, I trust that, you know, trust me that you can call me and I'll be there for you. And anyways, I think it's really empowering to just feel like you're really seen. And I think Den kind of understands who I am, that I can be a little bit of ham, or I can put on a good face and a smile. And but at the end of the day, I think he knows, like, hey, everyone's going through crap, and you know, always know I'm there for you. Anyways, it was just I've never actually talked about that moment with anybody. I didn't know I was even going to get emotional about it. But anyways, it meant a lot. It meant a lot. Anyways, I'm really appreciative of, and I love him. I have a hard time. I don't know. I always struggle with that with siblings. I have to think man, I should probably say that. I know you feel it, but you should probably say it.
Yeah, love and hugs weren't a thing growing up, right? Yeah. So, what do you want to do? Should we switch since the camera's already there?
Yeah, let's just switch.
And
let me make sure my phone's still good. I'm just gonna peek at it. It's high quality right there.
Yeah. All right. I think so same vein, right? So a lot of the memories I have with Denton that are like meaningful and where I really appreciated him they all have one common thread, and it was when Denton like accepted me into his circle. Like they all have that. And as Trevor was talking, that occurred to me, and I was asking myself, like, why is that? And I think it's just because, Denton and I, for so long, we were not in each other's circles growing up. And so, the first moment that happened, it was like, whoa. And every moment after, it's been like, it's like anytime he, accepts me into his circle or whatever. And it's a lot different, now. It's almost second nature for him to do that and for us to be brothers that get along and stuff. But probably the first, and I talked a little bit about this in a different other time we recorded, but when I think the first time that Denton, growing up in high school, he was really into skating. He had built these really cool ramps and blocks outside to do tricks on and have his friends over and stuff. And I was, watching him, and then eventually I was like, I want to get a skateboard too. And I think part of that's my nature. Really, though, the part of it is like I wanted to be in Denton's circle. He was always on the bleeding edge, that like 2 steps ahead of me. That I always wanted to be like, oh, what's that edge like? I want to be on that edge. And I think it was hard for Denton, especially when you're really young. A few years make a huge difference, or 18 months even make a huge difference in your physical and mental capabilities, right? And so it like never jibed well for me and Denton to be around each other. But at some point in high school, I think I had gotten a skateboard trying to follow suit with Denton, and he was out there with his friends. And at some point, he just, it was like the first moment I feel like it ever happened where he was like, hey, Jeff, have you ever tried that ramp? And I'm sitting there just going, I can skate with you? Like, I'm in? But kind of back to your comment, I'm sure I was acting cool because I'm sure his friends were there. And I'm sure I was like, yeah, I'm sure I've hit that, when you weren't around or whatever, but yeah, I'll try it. And just getting out there and going up the first ramp and coming back down and him going, oh, cool. And like, that was about it. But I stayed skating with him the rest of the day. And that was like everything. Like the session ended right. And for him, it was just another day. The session ends and they go do something else or whatever. But for me, I'm like, all right, session's over. All right. And I'm like, what do we do with this gang? Like, what's protocol? But for me, it was everything because Denton had, brought me into his circle and was like allowing me. I felt like it was some form of like tribal initiation, where there was nothing really there except that he just allowed me to be there, and I'm sure I thought I had something to prove or whatever, but it was just full acceptance, and that meant everything. So another experience, when he remembers this better than I do, but again, after that he started inviting me more and more to doing things with him, and I always wanted to do things with him. And he was going hiking up a river, and it wasn't Seven Falls. It was somewhere else, but I think Richie was there. It may have been for Richie's.
It was Richie's bachelor party.
And were you there?
Yeah.
Oh, you were there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you're gonna remember this. So, yeah, we were there, and we spend hours going up and hours coming back, and we're wading through deep water at times, floating through small, or not small, but slow-moving water at others. A lot of getting up on rocks and moving through. And I drove, and when we got back to the cars, now this is hours, we had gotten back, I reached back into my back pocket and go, guys, the key's not in my back pocket. The car key is not in my back pocket. And everybody, it was, in those moments, like, it's like this mixture of like, are you serious? And like dread, and also like you're young enough to still be like, what's gonna happen next? Like you're kind of a little perky, but you're like, we're by this road, and we only see cars drive by once in a blue moon, and we're coming up towards the end of the day. If nobody
probably
comes,
didn't even have cell service.
I'm sure there's no cell service. I mean, I remember thinking there were no other options than to look for the key or start walking or break the window.
Yeah.
But even if you break the window, what are you going to do? You have no key.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and Denton, just stepped up to the circle of us talking about, like, what the heck? And he said, well, let's pray about it and swim back and see what we can find. And, we can talk a lot about, we prayed and then we went. But it was like that moment, right? When you're young, you want to pretend like you're a macho man and, like, we can figure this out. And there's almost like this individualistic nature to kind of our culture. And Denton steps up and says, hey, let's call on a God, and then let's go back. And, like, that was a big moment for me, where I was like, okay, not only do I like that can be a normal thing to do. That does not have to be something that we shy away from. And we said a prayer, and we went back up, and we were all, and, people are asking me, like, where'd you go? And I'm like, I don't know where I went. Like, how do you remember where you went? Like, okay, I'm pretty sure I swam, like, right here, and it's big, like you remember portions of that. I mean, it was
really wide,
50 feet wide or something like that. And there were rocks and crevices and then deep areas where you had to swim through, and luckily, heaven sent miracle. Probably 100 yards up, Denton had his goggles and was swimming through a deep area where we guessed I had swam, and he brings his head out of the water. He's got his goggles. He's like, I see him. They're right here. I'm not kidding. And he, he took the dive, grabbed him, and we went on our way. And I am sure it wasn't just me who on the way home had several times thought, like, holy cow, like, that worked. We prayed and it worked out. Like, we called on God and it worked out. And that was a turning point for me, and also kind of like a turning point in kind of how I saw Denton too, because I'd never seen him, on the fly like that, in a very casual and even adventurous situation, call on God. And it's not like somebody was bleeding on the side of the road where you're like, it was a situation we probably could have gotten out of, and yet he still called on God. And that was I thought that was really cool. Okay, so let's see. So, BYU, this was another experience where he kind of accepted me in. He was in his first semester, maybe second. I don't know how many he had before his mission, but I was still in high school, and Mom thought it would be a good idea. I never thought about this. Maybe she thought I wouldn't be able to handle college unless I had, like, an introductory. And so she was like, Jeff, you need to hop in a van with these people going out to Utah, and you need to spend a week with Denton. I was like, okay. And so we get in the car I'm with Jake, Scott, and we're driving out to Utah, and we get out there. It was Jake, Robert, and Tammy, but we get out there, and I don't have a cell phone at this time. I don't even know if Robert and Tammy had a cell phone. It's hard to think about a life without a cell phone, but I must have known Denton was at Wells. I think he lived in Wells at Heritage Halls, and I went in there and knocked on his door. What do you mean at Wells? Wells is one of the buildings in Heritage Halls.
Okay. So it's an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same one I lived at, so I'm pretty sure we lived in the same one. It's the closest one to the creek.
It's the same one that you would eventually live. So, like, at the time, you don't know anything about these apartment complexes.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would eventually, in years to come, live there. But Robert and Tammy dropped me off, and I go through the door, and I find his apartment, and knock, and he opens, and so began, like, our week together. and I don't know if it was a week, maybe it was a few days, but kind of your story about Denton taking you under his wing at BYU and kind of the how meaningful it was for you to have someone that like knew the ropes a little bit, or that was like kind of like trying to show you. He did the exact same thing for me, which, you know, as the younger brother looking up to the older brother who I'm like dying to know what bleeding edge he is living on and experiencing, for him to just like be like, hey, I'm going to class, you ready to come? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do come, right? Because I have nothing else to do. And I'm like, can I come? What's college like? Am I allowed to be in the classroom? Are there seating assignments? And this is what's going on in my mind, but, you know, casual Denton, he's already been there for a while. Let's go. And so we go, and he just took pride walking through campus, pointing to buildings and going, this is where this is. This is the Wilk, and they have really cool events there. And, you know, if you ever need money, there's the ATMs. And, you know, it was like this environment that he had become one with, that he was sharing with me. And I thought that was really cool. And he would play video games at the apartment, and he'd invite me to play video games with him. And, you know, and I even remember him, you know, we were sitting in Wells in his apartment in the living room at one point. He's like, I'm going to make a sandwich. You want a sandwich? And I'm like, yeah, I want to. I was like, oh yeah, you make your own sandwiches at college. I remember having that thought of like, he has to do his own cooking. He's like, you want a sandwich? He's like, oh yeah. And he's like, I always stock bread, peanut butter, jam, which is what I'm pretty sure all the Scott boys stocked their whole, you know, college experience. But just watching Denton introduce me to surviving outside of 1651 Crawford Road, you know, like surviving outside of our home growing up was cool, and he took pride in it, and he cared enough to show me, not just like, you know, like I easily could have been something like a chore, or like mom's making him come out here and I'd rather be doing stuff, but let's try to survive. Like he invited me into his life to just experience it. So that was neat. The last experience I'll give is a way more recent experience. You know, religion has always been like, you know, part of our life, the LDS Church and everything. Blessings were given to us growing up, but not a ton, you know, and it just depends on, you know, that's relative, saying it's whether or not it's a ton, but it was it this last year?
Yeah.
So this last year, September. We're in Tahoe.
September 2019.
Yeah, and Denton has this idea that to invite Dad to give us the rounds on blessings, you know, to get together in the living room of this Airbnb that we were at and sit around, and Dad was going to give Denton a blessing, and Denton kind of invited and challenged us to, you know, all get a blessing from Dad. And, you know, blessings are kind of intimate, and normally those happen one-on-one with somebody. At most you have your spouse there or something, but I thought it was really neat to have Dad, who was probably a little nervous. I have no idea, but probably a little bit nervous, to give us all a blessing individually, of which I thought were very intimate blessings, in the midst of trying to give 5 blessings. You know, it's like that was a whole new experience for our family. And Dad, you know, it's weird to say that he did a good job, because that's not how you describe an experience like that. He did a very like spiritual, intimate job of giving us all a blessing. And what I think is really neat is that somehow that whole experience started as a seed at some point in Denton's mind. I don't know if it occurred to him during a prayer or reading a book, or, a strong desire to connect the family or something. But he eventually nourished it enough to muster up the courage one day to bring it up to us. I remember him bringing it up before we ever went out to Tahoe. And, the first time you hear something like that, him telling us, hey, I have this idea. Let's have Dad give the round on blessings while we're out there. My first thought was like, this is new. Should I think that's weird or should I think that's normal? And this is, you begin to have all these thoughts. And at any rate, I remember thinking, but at the end of the day, good job for Denton for sticking his neck out there, for doing something that's a little vulnerable and risky, for something that's probably good, and he followed through with it. I mean, he maybe talked to me about it one more time, but it wasn't anything in depth, just casually mentioning it. And then when we were out there, he pulled us all together and kind of ran the show, again, and I'm sure everybody there was thinking the same thing of, like, this is new, this is, what do we do? And Denton made sure it went well and, people were heard and things like that. And so I thought that was neat. I thought that was an evolution of watching Denton kind of as, it's not the patriarch, but it's like the oldest brother. Is there a word for that? It's like he's, I think there's a word for it.
Yeah, in the Bible, what's the oldest son is the...
Oh, is that what I'm thinking of?
I can't believe I don't remember this.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't remember. It's probably because we don't... Do you read the Bible, Trevor? I don't read the Bible. No, I'm just kidding.
There are large chunks of the Old Testament that I've only read once.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Dad. So anyway, I thought that was an evolution of Denton stepping into that role of the oldest brother, and not that he has any obligation to carry us through, but he does have a responsibility on his shoulders, I think, to some degree of leading us on in some way, and he did that. So anyway, those are birthright.
Boom.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Whoa, I don't know if birthright's the right word. I know what you mean, though. Isn't there another word? Google term for oldest
closed.
brother. Oh. Yeah, we can do it later. Okay. Happy birthday, Denton.
Yeah, happy birthday, Denton.